if you want it. And we play it like that, unedited and unfiltered, because here we are in the ninth inning of the 2024 presidential campaign and possibly of our democracy. Near the end of Trump's third run for the White House, and it's worth remaining clear-eyed about exactly what the choice is. Trump is now publicly facing all of you, the voters of America, with his cranky, exhausted, vulgar self. Between the discussions of Arnold Palmer's penis size, the conversations about sharks, and Hannibal Lecter, who he started calling Dr. Hannibal Lecter, like he knows something we don't know about some secret PhD the character obtained. The bizarre moments of swaying to his favorite playlist for 30 minutes. There remains one consistent through line in Donald Trump's third run for the office, his deeply authoritarian inclinations and promises. And it comes out even in the friendly confines of his favorite television network, Fox News. In an interview on Sunday, Donald Trump is given a chance to take it all back, to walk back or tone down the comment that Democrats living in this country are, quote, the enemy within. And here's what happened.
You talk about the enemy within. There's enemies, America's enemies outside. The enemy within is a pretty ominous phrase if you're talking about other Americans.
I think it's accurate. I mean, I think it's accurate.
Who are you talking about?
And,
the enemy?
you know, I heard that. They say, oh, the enemy. On the outside, you have Russia, you have China, you have a lot of different groups. These are bad people. We have a lot of bad people. But when you look at Shifty Schiff and some of the others, yeah, they are, to me, the enemy from within. I think Nancy Pelosi is an enemy from within.
That's where we are. And then in an interview here on MSNBC, Vice President Kamala Harris had a simple message in response to Donald Trump's crude smears about her and this unhinged behavior we all see.
So the American people deserve so much better. That's how I come at it. And to your point, the President of the United States must set a standard, not only for our nation, but understanding the standard that we as a nation must set for the world. You know, we as representing the United States of America walk into rooms around the world with the earned and self-appointed authority to talk about the importance of democracy, rule of law, and have been thought of as a role model, imperfect though we may be, but a role model of what it means to be committed to certain standards, including international rules and norms, but also standards of decorum. And what you see in my opponent, a former president of the United States, really is, it demeans the office. And I have said, and I'm very clear about this, Donald Trump should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States. He has not earned the right. He's not earned the right. And that's why he's going to lose.
In a few minutes, Vice President Kamala Harris will be joined at a campaign event in Michigan alongside Liz Cheney. It's the second stop in that swing state tour that we mentioned. We'll bring it to you live when it gets underway. But we start right now with some of our most favorite reporters and friends and people who can handle the truth of who Donald Trump is showing all of us he really, truly is. It starts with NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard. He's with Donald Trump in North Carolina today, along with us for the rest of the hour, the whole hour. MSNBC political analyst Tim Miller is here, former RNC spokesman, host of the Bulwark podcast, and New York Times editorial board member. MSNBC political analyst Mara Gay's here. Also joining us, distinguished political scholar and professor at Princeton University, Eddie Glaude is here. Vaughn Hilliard, I'm sorry to come to you straight out of this. There's so much there to reckon with as a country, as voters. But again, none of this was caught on secret tape. None of this was leaked from someone rolling their recorder in the backseat of the Beast or whatever vehicle Donald Trump is moved around in these days. These are things Donald Trump is saying at a rally. This is part of a pattern of displaying empathy for Harvey Weinstein, but describing Americans as the enemy within, given a chance on Fox News, where these anchors have made clear that they want him to do better. Laura Ingraham did it last week. Howard Kurtz did it this week. They want him to clean up this enemy within, and he will not do it. Nope, not going to do it. That's who they are, Democrats and people who oppose me. He named two there, Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi. Take me inside these closing days of the third Donald Trump campaign for the White House.
I think, Nicolle, it'd be accurate to report to you contextually that 2 weeks out from Election Day, this individual that you're looking at, the Republican nominee for President of the United States, the former President Donald Trump, is, I would assert, the most unencumbered, publicly confident Donald Trump that I have seen in now 5 years, since before the pandemic struck his White House and his administration. This is somebody who in 2022 went around the country to prove to his Republican Party that he would be able to primary those that had previously impeached him. He was successful. In 2023, he went up against the likes of a Florida governor, a former UN ambassador, a former vice president, his own running mate, Mike Pence, all individuals who tried to challenge him. And what did he do? He beat them all. And he proved to the country again that he was all powerful in the Republican Party. And here in 2024, over the course of 4 indictments, being found guilty on 34 felony counts, he has effectively been able to evade any punishment for any of the criminal charges that were brought before him. And when Donald Trump, standing here on stage just a few minutes ago, told this crowd that he sees the polls and he is up in every battleground state, and goes on to suggest that he should also win the state of California if God were the vote counter. This is somebody who is confident about his position here, and yet at a moment in time where we are reckoning with Donald Trump also suggesting publicly to this crowd repeatedly that Democrats are on the cusp of cheating. And he pointed out to RNC chairman Michael Wallace, who is from North Carolina here, and he said he's here in charge of keeping Democrats from cheating. And I bring that up because just about 2 hours ago, we were at another stop where I had the opportunity to ask Donald Trump not a question about what will that cheating look like, but instead the question that I presented to him, Nicolle, was, have there been any specific incidents of cheating up to this point that you or Michael Watley would like to present to the country? And he said, no, not at this time. It's too early. But then he gets up on stage and suggests the only way that he would lose this election is if Democrats would cheat. It's a lot that is coming down to ultimately a 15 days here that could very well, for Donald Trump, I think here be a moment that the country is watching somebody who believes wholeheartedly that he will win the election. And it's not quite clear if he does not what the country would look like in the aftermath of it.
Von Hilliard, let me freeze frame on winning California in the same breath that he says he thinks he's winning in the battleground states, because you could, I guess, theorize that he's seeing something we're not seeing, right? In his mind, it happened in 2016. But when you lump in California, it erases the credibility of the claim about the battleground states. Tell me more about Trump's belief as a candidate to be not just president, but the nation's commander-in-chief, saying publicly that he thinks he's winning California.
And frankly, his people, his supporters, a large number of them, they echo it. This is not the first time that Donald Trump has suggested that he would win California. He suggested it at an event that I was at in 2023. He suggested it to Phil McGraw in an interview about 2 months ago. Now, let's be very clear. He lost the state of California to Joe Biden by 5 million votes, a 2-to-1 margin, and yet that has not stopped him from putting out the idea that he actually won California, again, if God was the actual vote counter. And I think that's an important point, because I was actually at his rally in Coachella, California, a week ago this weekend, and I went and talked to 50 of his supporters there at that rally and very straightforwardly asked them whether they believed that Donald Trump had actually won the 2020 election in California. And out of those 50 individuals, Trump supporters that I talked to, 30 of them said that. And it's quite reflective of the mass part of the Republican electorate that believes that the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump. And as you said it, I don't think that there is any bigger lie to draw that stark contrast to reality with than other than the California claim. And again, 30 out of 50 people I talked to at that California event last week believe that he had in fact won California. I think that is why editorially it's important to note that him suggesting that has repercussions that extend down to the ground here.
So Donald Trump lost California, Vaughn, by 5 million votes, but 30 of 50 people believe he won. Why would that be useful to Donald Trump?
It is about sending a message to the party and to those around him that his words have power. And the MAGA base, that's again, when I go back to those primaries in 2022, the MAGA base listens to Donald Trump. And when you look at who surrounds him right now, there is going to be no surprise defectors here at this point. Those who resisted Donald Trump, the likes of Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger or the Tom Rices, those folks have all spoken out now at this point. This Republican Party, Donald Trump has proved over the last 3 years since leaving the White House that this is a Republican electorate that listens to him, believes him, and will stand and have his back essentially under any circumstances. If we watched one insurrection in the Republican electorate, despite what watched unfold, despite the January 6th Select hearings, the Republican electorate, maybe just a simple majority, but a majority of that electorate has stood by him despite everything that has come down him. And when you look at the man on stage, it's a man that knows that. And I think that everything you watched unfold this weekend, you could call it a lack of discipline, you could call it a man in isolation, but it's a man who is wholly confident that he is able to effectively say whatever he wants, campaign however he wants, and that the people of the Republican Party on the very ground level, that they will have his back.
Tim Miller, let me start with you on the Arnold Palmer of all this. This is the Palm Beach Post reporting on Arnold Palmer's daughter. And what Arnold Palmer's daughter says Arnold Palmer would think of Donald Trump today. Quote, I think he'd cringe. Quote, my dad didn't like people who act like they're better than other people, Peg Palmer said. Quote, he had no patience for people who are dishonest and cheat. My dad was disciplined. He wanted to be a good role model. He was appalled by Trump's lack of civility and what he began to see as Trump's lack of character. Peg Palmer recalls one moment when her father saw Trump on television during the 2016 presidential campaign. Quote, one moment stands out in my mind, she said. My dad and I were home in Latrobe. He died in September, so this was before the election. The television was on, Trump was talking, and my dad made a sound of disgust, like or ugh, like he couldn't believe the arrogance and crudeness of this man, who was the nominee of the political party that he believed in. Then he said, quote, he's not as smart as we thought he was, and walked out of the room. What would my dad think of Donald Trump today? I think he'd cringe. Let me show you this also before we deal with Arnold Palmer, because it has some significance in terms of what the Trump base thinks they're getting with Donald Trump. Here's CNN interviewing. This is Jake Tapper's interview with Speaker Mike Johnson, who's simply put on the spot about Trump's public closing argument.
Is this really the closing message you want voters to hear from Donald Trump? Stories about Arnold Palmer's penis?
Well, listen, I think that the headline that I read about the rally in Pennsylvania yesterday was the big question, and it's the one that Kamala Harris has not been able or willing to answer, and that is, are you better off now than you were under the Trump administration 4 years ago?
Why is he talking about Arnold Palmer's penis in front of Pennsylvania voters?
Jake, you seem to like that line a lot. Let me tell you that Donald Trump is doing rallies nonstop around the country.
Let me just say something. I don't want to be talking about this. Right. Donald Trump is out there saying it. It is.
But you continue to. Let's talk about.
Because you won't.
Wait a minute.
It.
Hold on.
You won't address it. He is out there talking to voters.
No, I'll address it. Let me answer it. Okay, don't say it again. We don't have to say it. I get it. There's lines in a rally. When President Trump is at a rally, sometimes he'll speak for 2 straight hours. You're questioning his stamina, his mental acuity. Joe Biden couldn't do that for 5 minutes. That's how you started this segment. You said, what